Well, there's a few faces that I don't recognize. So just want to introduce myself. My name's Kyle. And maybe last Sunday was your first Sunday here, and you're like, who's this guy? I was on vacation with my boys. We got to go see family. My dad has 16 grandkids, and I have the only two that live over a mile away from him. So we had 5 days of zero sleep. It was a good time, though. Well, tonight is going to be a little different than any of the other family nights that we've had. We started family nights at the beginning of the church last September as a way to start to develop community and relationship. And last month, we launched our first set of community groups. And so for me, looking forward, I was like, let's start making family night this every 3-month-ish, kind of quarterly kind of thing, where we get together, we worship, and we talk about kind of here's where I see kind of God leading us. What I want you to hear this as is family night, not Kyle tells you everything that we're going to do night. In the sense of this is a family, and God as He moves us as a family, will speak to every one of us. And so I believe God is going to speak tonight. This isn't, the church is not something that religious professionals run and you do what we say. The idea is that we're all gifted a unique way. God wires us a certain way. He then sends us to be people a certain way, and He gathers us in community as His church. Already tonight, I believe God has spoken. Even in just conversations with you all, some of you with ideas of things that you want to do and ways you want to live out your faith. Man, be paying attention to that tonight. If you hear something that you're like, oh man, that's very similar to what I've been thinking, let's talk, let's get coffee, let's hang out. If you're like, man, if you hear something that maybe gives you a catch in your spirit, that's something I need to deal with. Let's meet up. Let me walk through this with you. Let me pray with you. If you hear something man, I've never heard that before. Or man, I've never lived out my faith before. Man, don't wait. I never, we started this church in September. Guys, I never want to pastor a church that's just playing church. God's Spirit is moving and active, and He says He's making all things new. And so let's pay attention to that. I believe He is going to speak tonight. How I want to do it is just kind of by talking us through maybe kind of where we've been. God is always quick to say, don't forget, so remember. And then maybe some things that I'm thinking about on where we are going. So first one, remember. A year ago, we were just a handful of people that met in my garage. And I like that. I'm cool with that. I don't need anything big or crazy, but we just were a handful of people that met in my garage, and we kind of watched God do something over the summer and into September where, man, has He blessed us. Since September, and so you'll hear me, sometimes churches say we never talk about numbers, and sometimes churches only talk about numbers. You haven't really heard me talk about them that much, but I just want you to see God's providence, His provision. Since September, we've had 6,829 worshipers, which is pretty awesome. We've had 18 people baptized, which is eternally awesome. Yeah. We've seen a kids ministry where kids have come from all over, kids that have grown up in church, kids who have never been to church. We've had an amazing group of teachers and support and security and check-in every single Sunday. And then recently we've seen groups. Yeah, I like that you give it a woo. Yeah, we'll give the kids a little. When you have kids, you're very vested in that. And I've just been blown away by the way they have all hit the ground running in Refuge Kids. So if you've been a part of that in any way, it's just been, the amount of positive feedback I've gotten from that has been wild. And then groups. We started those a month and a half ago or 5-6 weeks ago. And just already to see people growing together in community, to see people listening to God and seeing where he's sending them. This was just kind of a little primer. We're really going to kick them off in the fall, but it has been huge. We've seen people come to faith who've told me just a few months ago I would have never stepped foot in a church. And we've seen people come to faith who have said, man, I had a brutal experience growing up in the church, and now, man, I'm all in because I feel like I really know who Jesus is. And so God has been really, really good. Like anytime you start going down this road of church planting, if anybody thinks that they are or knows that they're going to be successful, they're just wrong. You don't know what God's going to do. And to see how he's started to mold us together as a family and a community has just really, really been beautiful. So what I want to ask you to do right now, and we're going to pray about this a little later, but I'm just trying to get your brain going, is what has God done in your life over the last 9 months? How has he spoken to you? How has he maybe invited you down new roads? How has he comforted you in the midst of pain? How has he brought you relationships that you could have never imagined? It was almost 3 years ago, pretty close, 2 years, 9 months maybe. There was this lady, I spoke at a church in Ventura, and she came up to me, and she drives a silver Camaro, and she says, I need to meet with you to talk to you about this church. And I think I want to be a part of it. And I was like, well, it's not happening for a long time. She's like, I don't care. God moved me to Ojai, and I think it's time that I think this is where he's sending me, where he's moving me. And I didn't know it at the time, but I met with her, and God started to give my family and I a great friend. You've got to know her as Barbara. Like, she's amazing in how she serves behind the scenes. She's amazing in how she desires to grow in her faith. She's amazing in how she sat up here vulnerably and shared her story with you. And for me, I don't want to ever forget those things. Because outside of Jesus, our paths probably don't cross. Outside of Jesus, my family, my wife, my boys, myself, we don't get the friend that we have. And I don't get to be inspired by the way she follows Jesus. There's a lot of stories like that in the church. So I don't want us to forget those. I want us to remember. How has God worked in your life over the last year? At the same time, we don't forget, we remember. I want us to prepare. Like, God's always going to do the work, but in his story, he often shows us and tells us, like, it is about us following him. It's not about us figuring it all out, but it is about us trusting him, listening to him, letting him prepare the way. And we step in and say, yes. One of the ways we do it is by studying the Bible, by preaching the Bible. And so one of the ways we're going to prepare for the fall is our next series is going to be through the book of James. So you can start reading that now. Kicks off this week. You read chapter 1 and get a head start. And when I start on Sunday, you can look around and go like, I've already done that. We're going to go through the book of James for the next 8 weeks. And then after that, through the bulk of the summer, we're going to look at specifically Jesus throughout the Old Testament. We're going to see that God didn't go to the New Testament and go, that whole idea was terrible, let me redo another idea, but the fact that Jesus was true and present throughout all of it. Folks, we never want to follow him because we feel like we have to or because he's twisting our arm. God says, just see what I've done. Be in relationship with me. I'll love you, you love me, and then let's do this. And one of the most profound ways for me that I've gotten to see God is in the way he's, since the beginning, from Genesis, been working this plan through Jesus. And so we're going to study that. And if you want to read the whole Old Testament, go for it. And then when I get up on the first week, you can really be like, you thought you were cool, you read one chapter in James. I crushed it from Genesis to Malachi, right? Prepare. We never want to move forward without him. So we're founded in his word. I always want to do topical series, but I also will always throughout the year do series where we go through a whole book of the Bible. And so we'll do James, and then we'll do the person of Jesus, specifically in the Old Testament. We have a way that God gives us, and that is to be a people who sharpen each other and who grow each other up, but who are also always interested in the person outside of our doors. We talked about this 2 weeks ago, like one of the stories Jesus tells that speaks of our God that then we're called into is when the shepherd leaves the 99 to find the one. So I want to ask you right now, who is your one? I asked you in that sermon a week and a half ago. I know you all remember it. Just because I was gone last week doesn't mean I forgot. But we want to do some things to help you engage your one. Invite your one. So we'll keep doing things like Invite Sunday. That's not just so we get the big donuts that day. It's not just so we can watch the kids go crazy with the bounce house. And so we have a space and a place to invite people and maybe help them. Like I was a person who would have never came to church just on my own. God used someone to invite me. And so we want to provide those spaces, and we'll do that every month, but we also want to provide unique spaces as a church. And so what we have coming up is a 4th of July party. Now, show of hands, did any of you come to that last year? Yeah, that's sweet, yes. Now, here's the thing behind the 4th of July party. It's work, okay? Like, it's like when, you're preparing for people to come to your house, and it's awesome, and it's fun, but it takes work. And so we want to have this space for the church, for the city and the valley, so when they come here, we can let them know that we're here, we can invite them to our church, but I'm also asking you to help us prepare. Starting this Sunday, I'll have an email address where you can email like, hey, I'm willing to come, hey, I'm willing to help out. If you're wondering, what does helping out look like? It means you're filling up someone's drink. It means you're hauling some trash. It means you are a bounce house bouncer, okay? It means maybe you're setting up chairs so people can watch fireworks. It's an awesome opportunity, guys, to see people come and be blessed. And if you're wondering, how does this fit into the gospel? Well, Jesus, for some reason, was always throwing parties, and he was always having people eat. And I have a lot of, this isn't in the Bible, but I think one of the ways and reasons he does that is because when people eat, you realize we all have to eat. Nobody looks cool when they're eating, but everybody wants to do it. And so you have conversations, and you have connection, and you're humbled. You can be the richest, coolest dude on the planet, but when you eat al pastor, it's going to run down your arm, And we want to be a place that blesses our town and blesses our valley and invites them in to know us more. The amount of people that have said, I came here because you invited me to the 4th of July has been huge. I'm not saying every one of them's come back every week, but some of them have. And who knows when they will again? Who knows when God will lead them in? And guys, we're not about Refuge becoming gigantic, but we are about preaching the gospel to the Ojai Valley. This is where God has put us. We prepare. What is God saying to you? And I mean that like I want to have these conversations over the next year. What is he saying to you? My job, as I see it, is to take what God is doing in you and just pour gas on it. Give you a megaphone if you need it. Give you resources if you need it. Connect you with other people if you need it. Like, let's run. Let's go. This is how he's changed the world for thousands of years. Just when we're sitting out there before tacos, someone comes. This is my dream. He doesn't know this. He doesn't even know I'm going to say it. But this is literally my dream as a pastor. He comes to me just 45 minutes ago and says, I want to help single moms. Can we get together and talk about that? If I can help them financially. He doesn't know that. In my mind, I'm doing backflips, right? Because this is what God does. There's nothing more gospel-centered than helping single moms. But this is what God will do. He'll speak to us. He'll make us into a body. A body has to move. If a body doesn't move, it's sick. If all we do is come in and hang out on Sundays, and all we do is listen to a sermon and go, that was great, or that wasn't so good. You never say that. But we want to move. We want to be sent. What is God saying to you? We talk about this a lot in the book of Matthew. Jesus says, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. So he's saying, I could say anything right now. He says, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. And he says, so go. Tell people about me. Go everywhere. Make disciples of all nations. Like, let's live this out. But we have to be people who are willing to hear from him, to listen to what he says, and to then have the courage to act on it. Over the last year, I've had a friend who just has inspired me in that way. She'll tell me about her relationship with God and how she just talks to him. Says, God, this has come up. What are you going to do about it? And then he does something about it. Doesn't always do probably what she might think he will do, but he always does something about it. Let's be that people. Let's prepare. Let's remember. Let's prepare. And then let's always be willing to serve. Like our Savior who hung on that cross, who we sing about every week. What did he say? I came to serve, not to be served. I came to serve, not to be served. He didn't pound his chest and say, look at me. He sacrificed so that people would look at others. What does this mean? Well, it can mean small things, not even small, but things that are routine, like a Sunday. Absolutely, we need servants to keep the church going, right? That's true. I'm not trying to hide behind that. But do you know the hospitality you can extend to others by serving them a cup of coffee? Do you know what a parent feels when they can trust that their kid is going to be in there for an hour and they're going to be safe? Do you know what a parent feels when they know that they can just have a break from their kid for an hour? Do you know what it means to someone like me when I have to preach and I have to meet with folks, that somebody would come and set up the barrels outside or the signs or take them down? Folks, if you consider serving, and so many of you already do, but inviting others in on it. It's one thing for them to hear me ask them. But when they hear you, and they hear how you're blessed, this is how we tell the story of Jesus. I already mentioned it, so I'm not going to beat it to death. But what is your passion? Like, it's my dream, man. I could see a church where in 10 years we sit back and we go, oh, this ministry started, and this ministry started, and that ministry started. Not because of me, If because God spoke to you and you had the courage to go, I think he's telling me to do this. And then we just watch him go crazy. If you're like, I don't have the experience to do that. I don't have the education to do that. I don't have the money to do that. If you're hearing that right now, in the Bible, that usually means that's exactly what he's calling you to. If you're like, no, I need to wait another year, that's usually exactly when he's calling you. I need more experience. No. Because as you step into it, then you don't tell your story. You tell his story. One word you'll hear me start to use this fall, and it's an old school word. It's a biblical New Testament word that some churches still use, but most don't. But I figured, why not just bring it back? And that's the word deacon. It's a beautiful word. It's a word that lit the church on fire back in the day. It's become kind of this religious word, but I say we don't have to let it be that. It's a serving word, a servant word. It's connected to the hands and feet of Jesus' word. So we'll start to set up what that looks like for people so that you'll know, oh man, there's someone who's dedicated and focused on serving. And then, folks, I'm going to be real. We need leaders. And this is just family night, so we can be honest. I've pastored 2 other churches. And in those churches, one of the problems has been too many people stepping forward to lead who weren't qualified. Okay? Does that make sense? So the problem, so my issue was, okay, I got to make sure we vet the right people and get them in the right places. I don't know if it's a problem, but the challenge here has been not enough people stepping forward to lead. And I'm not trying to criticize at all. I'm just trying to be honest and real so we know how to pray. Because we need leaders. And if you step forward to be a leader, I'm not just going to say yes just because you can breathe, because the Bible speaks specifically about when you're ready to kind of lead. But if you're ready, let's talk. If you're interested, let's talk. Let's at least get on that path. Maybe it'll be 2 years or 3 years or 4 years, but let's talk. That's how we can be a family. And then let's be people who share. I don't see it up there, so maybe my slide got missed. But let's be people who share, who invite, who are generous with our words and our story, and generous with our money. Don't stop inviting. Like I said, we'll have Invite Sundays. This week we have coming up the child dedications. We have Father's Day. We have the 4th of July party. I want to always give you a quiver of arrows for you to invite people to. You have to be willing to share your story. Sure, you can tell them to come and hear me or come and hear Brittany sing. There's nothing wrong with that. But I say what's going to seal the deal is when they find out how it changed you. The Bible says always be ready, always be prepared to share the hope that is within you. Be ready to share your story. Bug me for tools, badger me. Give me ideas, Kyle. Tell me what I can talk to them about. We're working through this part of my story, and they have this question. Annoy me. I haven't reached a level of annoyance yet. Let's do that. Always be ready to share. Folks, always be ready to be generous with your money. I know this can be a hard thing. I've told many of you this, but I'm always going to tell it this is one of the hardest things for me when I came to faith as a Christian. I grew up in a faith that made you give your money, Well, you didn't have to, but you risked ridicule and exposure. At the end of the year, you would take your W-2 in, and if your W-2, if what you'd given that year didn't match 10%, they would say you need to make up. And if you didn't make up, in a meeting like this, they would say, Kyle, they call you Brother Kyle, has not met his obligation for the year. So he's disqualified from, then they would list out what you were disqualified from. So when I came to faith, I only tell you that, so that when I came to faith in Jesus and I heard it was all about grace, and they said, hey, let's tell this story of generosity, I was like, no, not going to do that. And then I was married to this lady who just wanted to believe what God said. And so she said, no, we are people who are going to be generous. And I said, that's fine. Just don't show me how much. Real mature. I was very mature about this. And she would write the check, and they would pass the bag. And when she would get ready to put the check in the bag, I would turn my head away, as if in protest, right? And then one day, as I was reading, God just kind of struck me like, you want me to be generous with you? Do you want to tell my story of generosity? What if this isn't about performing, Kyle? What if this isn't about your arm being twisted? What if you're reacting not out of the truth of God inviting you to be generous, but out of your hurt from the past? And I remember going, oh, maybe. And Joy and another mentor helped me start to see what it meant to be generous. And so I'm not going to ever be shy to ask us to be. Because I believe it's a way to freedom. Worshiping money and being gripped by money is one of the easiest lies to buy into in our world. Doesn't mean you don't be smart with it. Doesn't mean you don't ask questions about where your money goes or what it's up to. But it does mean that we worship with it. So, I've told you before, and I'll always be transparent with you, we were started by churches who gave us money so we could run for the first year. In that first year, they supplied everything that we needed. We are now in the year where we need to step in with 25%. And right now, we are right on that dollar amount. Praise God. That's awesome. What happens is July 1st, a new fiscal year starts. So we run from July to June fiscal year. It can get a little confusing when we talk about year, but I hope you know what that means. In July, we will now need to be at 50%. And so what I'm asking you to do is, if you are someone who calls this church your home, would you consider giving? Would you go to God about that? Would you pray to Him? Would you see where He sends you down the road of generosity? If you want to talk to me about it, if you want to look at the Bible with me about it, I am all for that. You will never hear me legislate to you, you must give this much or you must do that, but you will always hear me say, because I just can't get away from it, trust me, I've tried for 20 plus years. Him say, man, you always have to be willing to tell my story of generosity with everything. We'll keep talking about it as a church, and feel free to tell others about it. The plan is that this next year, the second year, we take on 50% of our budget, and the outside supporting churches take on 50%. And then the following July, so July 2025, it'll move to 75% that we'll take on, and they'll cover 25%. And then the following July, 2026, is when we will seek to step out on our own and be self-supporting. It's a really amazing gift that these churches give us. So I'm just asking you to go to God with that. And if you have questions for me, again, feel free to annoy me. Let's talk. It does not bother me. The world makes us feel so weird about money. But feel free to ask. And let's talk. And then would you be willing to pray? Like my hope and vision for our church right now, it exceeds what our budget can do. What do I mean by that? Well, I believe we need some administrative support. And I would love by the fall, I'm just telling you what I'm praying for, that we would be able to start to pastor youth. Like if we can begin to pastor middle schoolers and high schoolers and have our kids ministry and what we have going on Sundays and you all ready to step out and lead how God's wired you. Man, what a beautiful church. Would you pray that God would provide that? I have a vision and a dream and a hope for our field out there. Right now it has some amazing weeds. But I could see a day where we have an outside amphitheater, where I don't mean anything fancy, just a place where we can gather and sing like this. A place where high school groups and middle school groups could meet. A field where kids could play soccer or go up on a playground structure. Areas for fire pits where men could gather for groups or women or mixed groups. I don't care. I'm not trying to just make it about dudes, but we like our fire pits. Anyway. A beautiful place where we could welcome the community for community events. A place where we could publicly just sing songs of worship and both bless some neighbors and maybe annoy some. Let's pray. What would it look like to give our heart to whatever he wants to do with us? Like, let him mold it. Let him shape it. I have my ideas all the time of what my future is, and then I realize I didn't ask him. I didn't talk to him. But let's be people, folks, who remember, who prepare, who serve, who share, and then who pray. If I come up here with ideas and it's not founded on prayer and it's not founded on his truth, it doesn't matter if it's the coolest thing in the world. God says it amounts to nothing. So let's be people who go to him for everything. I asked Brittany right now to play this song to kind of prepare us to pray. And if praying's new to you, like I'm not gonna point you out in here tonight. But what I want you to do is feel free. Like if you want to pray in a minute on your knees, you can pray on your knees. If you want to walk around the room, you can walk around the room. We're gonna kind of have a prayer. We're gonna sing this song first to kind of welcome God's Spirit in, and then I'm gonna come up with a prayer prompt, and we're gonna do that 3 times. We're gonna do it because, man, like I just said, we can make all the plans in the world, but if he is not a part of this, he is not leading us and guiding us in this, then it is all for naught. A couple of years ago, he started telling a story here that is beautiful and good. And I can't wait to see where he takes us the next 10, 20, who knows how many years. Let's sing right now that his Spirit would be